So until about 1990, the sleep community was convinced that poor sleep in the later years was a biological mandate. That view has gradually changed. But what they were concerned about was two things. A decrease in the deep parts of sleep. The sleep has several stages, and some stages are deeper than others, and the deeper stages are more restorative, more satisfying, and the increase in sleep disorders. So combining these two factors, people used to believe that we are condemned to have poor sleep when we get older. Well, in truth, our deep sleep does shrink or sometimes completely evaporate, starting somewhere around age 60. So between 60 and 75 or 60 and 80, it varies tremendously from one individual to the next. Most of us will lose most or all of our deep sleep. And what we're left with is a lot of stage 2 sleep apnea. 65% of our night is stage 2 sleep, which is light sleep. So that is a biological fact. We don't have as much deep sleep, and that takes a toll, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But it doesn't necessarily condemn us to an overall poor night of sleep. And it is true that sleep disorders do increase with advancing age. So in people 65 and older, the rate of insomnia is about 25%, which is a lot. And when you consider all sleep disorders, the prevalence is about 40% of older adults have some sleep disorder, insomnia being the most common one. So sleep apnea, restless leg, new movements, REM, behavior disorders, circadian rhythms, these are the biggies for older adults. And it's interesting how this has evolved. If you ask a physician as recently as 1985, you think I might have sleep apnea? His response or her response is most likely to be, huh? What do you mean? What's that? So our knowledge of sleep disorders has expanded tremendously. Sleep apnea, which I'm sure all of you know what that is, or know someone on CPAP or has had surgery. Sleep apnea was discovered in 1966. So before 1966, no one knew that approximately 5% of the population were literally choking to death in their sleep. So that's a new disorder, and that's the second most common sleep disorder in older adults. So that's the bad news. And this rate of 40%, the rate of total sleep disorders in younger adults is about 15%, so 40% is substantial. But that leaves 60% of older adults who don't have a sleep disorder. So most older adults don't have a sleep disorder. How are they doing? And that's what I'm going to focus on today. So the autonomy of sleep refers to how does sleep change across the lifespan. Let's see how sleep in non-sleep disordered older adults compares to the sleep of younger adults. So we did a study. We used random digit dialing to contact people in the community. This was the Memphis metropolitan area. And when we called someone and they agreed to participate, we sent them a packet. Had 2 weeks of sleep diaries and a bunch of other questionnaires, anxiety, depression, fatigue. And we kept on doing this. It took us 3.5 years till we got at least 50 men and 50 women in each age decade between 20 and 89, and in that final decade, 80 to 89, and collecting that data, if people we called were older than that, we included them. So we had 4 people older than 89, and we had 1 gentleman who was 98. So our total sample was 772 people, and to analyze this data, we used a form of multiple regression called trend analysis. So we could compare sleep in each decade. So we had 7 decades, and all those decade by decade comparisons would be just a big bucket of t-tests, and it gets more reliable, more t-tests. So we use something called trend analysis, which simply measures the general flow of the data. And I felt like that's what we're more interested in. So the data I'm going to show you today is our normal sleepers. So We eliminated everyone with a sleep disorder from our entire sample, and we were left with normal sleepers. The data is from sleep diaries. So sleep diaries, a little questionnaire you fill out in the morning, describe your sleep the night before. It takes about 2 minutes to fill this out. And it gives us a lot of data. It gives us sleep onset latency, which is how long does it take you to fall asleep at the beginning of the night. Wake time after sleep onset is how much time are you awake in the middle of the night. Number of awakenings is the number of awakenings. Total sleep time is the actual sleep duration. Sleep efficiency is the ratio of time slept to total time in bed. So if you're in bed for 8 hours, but you're only sleeping 6 hours, your sleep efficiency is 75%. So it's a measure of how much of your time in bed is spent sleeping. Normal sleepers are usually in the 90 to 95% sleep efficiency range. We asked them to report napping. And we used a 5-point Likert scale to measure sleep quality rating, from very poor to very good. And I have that asterisk. So of all these measures, if we're interested in understanding healthy, fulfilling sleep, I think the sleep quality rating is the most important one. So no matter how quick or how slow it takes to fall asleep, or how much time you're up in the middle of the night, I think it's important to ask someone, well, how was your night's sleep? And they could rate that, and their experience cannot totally be captured by these quantifiable variables. The quantifiable variables are important and worthwhile, but they don't always capture the sleep experience. So for me, if I want to understand how good a night's sleep did someone have, I want to know their sleep quality rating. And by the way, there's an interesting line of research, interesting to me anyway. So the last 5 years, well, the last 5 years that I was working, we're focusing on this uncoupling phenomenon. So some people with objectively poor sleep, when you ask them, how was your sleep, they'll say, it wasn't perfect, it was fine, no big deal, it was a good night's sleep. And other people who, by objective measures, had a really good night's sleep, ask them, how was your sleep? They'll say, terrible. And we'd get about 2 patients a month at the sleep center. And we'd collect their 2 weeks of sleep diaries, and I'd look at my student, and I'd say, this person seems really good. What are they doing here? And we'd ask them, how was your sleep? And they'd say, terrible. And I mean, that's a really interesting phenomenon to me. There's an uncoupling of sleep and sleep appraisal. So about 75% of the population have coherence between their sleep and the sleep appraisal. If they have a bad night's sleep, they'll say I had a bad night's sleep. If they had a good night's sleep, they'll say I had a good night's sleep. But it's the 25% that are uncoupled that is really interesting to me. I think this line of research can give insight into kind of health optimism. If someone had a bad night's sleep, and they say, sleep was fine. I'm just wondering how that view of how they appraise their sleep affects their health appraisal in other areas or other areas of life. And then you have the person who had a good night's sleep and say the sleep is awful. And how does someone get to the point where they have this negative view of this important health component when there's nothing objectively there to support negative view? Anyway, that's another story. Well, I'll talk a little bit about this issue of polysomnography and sleep diaries. So this is an issue that has been in the sleep field for a long time. So I'm just going to be presenting sleep diary data. I'm sure some of you go, well, that's not real data, it's not objective sleep. What about polysomnography? So polysomnography is going to a sleep center and getting about 15 pairs of electrodes glued and taped and banded, literally from the top of your head down to your calves. And that produces a lot of data, and that's valuable data. And for many years, people thought that was the gold standard of measuring sleep. And in terms of evaluating sleep apnea and some other sleep disorders, it absolutely is the gold standard. But insomnia and normal sleep is a different kind of animal. For one thing, it's impossible to know how does someone sleep at home compared to their sleep in a lab. They have to leave their familiar environment. They have to come and sleep in a hospital bed. They have all this stuff on them. They're being observed by strangers. How does that sleep correspond to sleep at home? Of course, there's no way of knowing that, because if we took all those electrodes and all their equipment and brought it into their home to see how their home sleep was, their home sleep would also be disturbed, corrupted. So this is a matter of conjecture, and we believe that sleep in a laboratory sometimes does not well represent sleep at home. So that's an issue. If you're interested in sleep in the natural environment, it needs to be measured in the natural environment. The other issue is that sleep perception does not always correspond to polysomnography. They're measuring different things. One is measuring the sleep experience, and one is measuring biological characteristics of sleep. And they're different things. And according to what you're looking for, the sleep experience, the subjective experience, may be more relevant to your questions than objective polysomnography. So, in our research, when we have funding anyway, we do polysomnography, and that produces interesting, valuable data. But most often, with people with insomnia, and really normal sleepers as well, we're more interested in the sleep experience than the biological characteristics of their sleep. So this is sleep onset latency. And to understand this figure, I'm going to show you a bunch of these. Let's see if I can get this going. So this represents decade 20 to 29. And this represents decade 30 to 39. And this represents decade 80 to 89 with a few 90-year-olds added in. And these are error bars. So there is some literature that indicates that sleep variability increases with age. So we were interested in standard deviations associated with each age decade. Turned out in our data, it was it didn't increase with older adults, although in other people's data they do find that. So what do we have here with sleep onset latency? It's in the high teens, between 15 and 20 minutes, all the way through age 60, and then at age 70 jumps up to about 20, maybe 21. So maybe you could argue there's a 4-minute increase in sleep latency in 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, and that's statistically not significant. That's good news. Wake time after sleep onset. This is wake time in the middle of the night. It's between 10 and 20 minutes, all the way through age 59. And at age 60, jumps up to the low 20s. And at age 80, that's around 25. So that's an increase. And that was a significant linear trend. So we can conclude statistically, from young adulthood to older adulthood, there is a significant rise in time spent awake during the night, from about 15 minutes to about 25 minutes. So there's about another 10 minutes of wake time in the middle of the night. A meaningful, statistically significant increase, but not a disaster. Another 10 minutes. This is number of awakenings. Now this is interesting data. It goes from about 1 in young adults all the way up to 1.8. So that is obviously significant, and it looks very dramatic, but the increase is from 1 awakening to almost 2 awakenings. And with that dramatic increase in wake time during sleep from the absence of deep sleep, again, from 1 awakening a night to almost 2 awakenings a night, it's an increase. It's not a disaster. So the actual awakenings during the night in older adults is about 4 or 5 on average, and we know that from polysomnography. They are waking up. But the awakenings are fairly short, and they're just not remembering it. So if you don't remember an awakening occurred at night, is that a meaningful event? So polysomnography shows us that they're awake for 2-3 minutes, about 5 times during the night. Some of the awakenings are longer, but they're just not remembering those relatively brief awakenings. So from an experience point of view, those awakenings never occur. This is total sleep time. This is good news. Those of you who are sleeping around 400 minutes a night, that's less than 7 hours a night. You'll be up to about almost 8 hours by the time you get to be night. It's just something you have to look forward to. 8 hours is in your future. So this is really good news, and this was surprising. And from this error bar, we could see that it's not a dramatic increase, but there is more variability in this older group. So let's say significant quadratic trend, which means this dip down here in the middle years is significant, and this rise again is significant again. This is good news. Sleep efficiency percent. So our subjects were sleeping around 88, 89%, a little increase there. Dips down a little bit more, gets as low as about 87%. So, I mean, normal sleepers will usually sleep in the low 90s%. This group are reporting sleep efficiency a little lower than we would generally expect. But comparing this group from their younger years to their older years, there's a decline of about 2% in sleep efficiency. That is not statistically significant. Nap time is around 15 minutes a day and increases up to about 25 minutes a day. And I call that a negative change, and that little dip is significant. So it dips down during the middle years and rises again. So it's about another 10 minutes a day of nap time. In part, that's due to more opportunity if you're not working. In part, it may be due to the influence of illnesses that make you tired during the day. But, so I'm going to count that as a negative change in sleep. I'm not convinced it actually is, but it's an increase in nap time, so we call that negative. So this is sleep quality rating. So every morning, our subjects are asked to rate their sleep from very poor to excellent. So 4 is a good marker, and our group never reached 4. So this is a hard sample. I guess those people in Memphis are just tough. They don't get up to 4, and 4 will be a good goal. So in our younger age groups, they're averaging about 3.5 between fair and good, and it gets up to about 3.6, 3.7. Their sleep quality ratings have gotten better over the years. I love this slide. And that's significant. So 3 of our measures got worse with age. Really, WASO and NWAC, time spent awake and number of awakenings, are coupled. You can't be awake if you don't have an awakening. So that's really one measure. That increased some, napping increased. 2 measures improved with age, sleep time and quality ratings. And 2 measures were stable over the lifespan. So how do we judge this? It's a matter of what seems sensible to you. To me, this is healthy, fulfilling sleep. You may have different criteria, different standards. This may not be so good to you, but within the context of a history of people telling us we have to sleep more poorly as we get older, this is a dramatic change from that convention. So this is a study that was published a few months ago. It comes out of the prestigious University of Pittsburgh Sleep Center. What they did was they collected studies that they've done over the years, 21 studies over about 20 years. So many of their studies are on people with sleep disorders, insomnia, sleep apnea, all kinds of sleep disorders. But sometimes in those studies, or in other studies focusing on normal sleepers, they've collected data over the years on normal sleepers. And they extracted from these 21 past studies a little over 1,000 people who did not have sleep disorders, so they're defined as normal sleepers. They went from age 10 to age 87, and got rid of all the sleep disorders. And, well, not only sleep disorders, but people who had serious comorbidities, serious psychiatric issues, serious medical issues. So these were really good sleepers. So I just copied their graph because I couldn't reproduce that. So between age 20, and this is sleep duration, is what I call total sleep time, actual time slept. It significantly decreased from 10-year-olds to 20-year-olds. Well, yeah. But from age 20 to age almost 90, no significant change. And the average is just under 7.5 hours a night. And you do see this widening gray area, that's the error zone, is much wider with older adults than younger adults, and that's the variation that we were looking for and didn't find. So their sleep duration is unchanging over the lifespan once you reach childhood. So they had these two measures that corresponded with our data. So that's what I'm comparing their data to our data. This is sleep efficiency. So that's 100% sleep efficiency at the very top, which means you get into bed full sleep immediately, sleep uninterrupted, wake up, get out of bed. No one that I know does that. So this sleep efficiency is actually significantly reduced over the lifespan, from about 96%, which is nice, to 93% with more variability, which is still nice. So one of the pitfalls of doing statistical analysis when you have a small number of subjects is that it's very hard to get significance. But it's equally true that when you have a very large number of subjects, it's really easy to get significance. So with 1,000 subjects, a decrease from 96% to 93% turned out to be statistically significant. But functionally, these people still have a sleep efficiency of 93%. That's more good news. So we have some data on African Americans. Sleep data on African Americans is not plentiful. It's not as much data as we had hoped, but it's really cherished data. So we had 178 normal sleeping African Americans on our sample. It's almost a fourth of our entire sample. Whoops. And I'll show you the same kind of data we've been looking at in this African American sample. We didn't do statistical analyses on it because when you divide 178 subjects over 7 age decades, it just seems statistically unstable to me. But we could still look at what we got. This is sleep onset latency. In the mid-20s, dips down in the middle years to low 20s, jumps up to about 27, 28, and then comes down again in the 80th decade, virtually identical to what it was during the younger years. So there's a low dip there and a high dip there, but on average, it's unchanged. This is wake time after sleep onset. In the low 20s, maybe 22 minutes, dips down in decade 50. That was a good decade for our subjects. Jumps up a little bit, and then comes down again in decade 80. Overall, I would say minor change in wake time during the night. Number of awakenings has to increase That's a biological mandate. But again, it was around 1 per night in the younger years, not even 2 per night in the older years. Total sleep times follows the same pattern of our larger normal sample. It dips down during the middle years and increases in the older years. More good news. And that's about 8 hours of sleep, right there. Sleep efficiency is dead on consistent. It's perfectly consistent. That's about 86 to 87%. Nap time decreases during the working years, increases during the older years, and the increase in nap time in our African American subjects compared to our Caucasian subjects, the increase in nap time is greater here. It gets up to close to 40 minutes a day. Sleep quality rating, gradually increasing over the years, dips down a little, rises again. So here we're at about a rating of 3.5. Here we're at a rating of about 3.3. Nothing wrong with that. So if we just casually look at the sleep of African Americans across their lifespan, 4 measures showed not much change. 1 measure improved, total sleep time again. 2 measures showed negative change, number of awakenings and nap time. I think their sleep is doing pretty good. So the threat of sleep disorders in older adults is a serious threat. But if you are lucky to avoid sleep disorders, in my opinion, you could look forward to some pretty nice sleep in your later years. That's about all I know about sleep.